Welcome to Shadow Warefare. This channel exists to expose hidden spiritual mechanisms, reveal how unseen words and agreements shape lives, and dismantle the quiet forces that operate beneath everyday reality. This is not a place for surface-level motivation or comfortable half-truths. This is a place where we talk about what really affects people when no one is watching, when prayers feel delayed, when patterns repeat, and when life seems to move under invisible resistance. Today's message is not meant to entertain you. It is meant to arm you with understanding. The topic is X, which exposes the 5 words that break every curse spoken against you. Before you listen casually, let me ask you something important. Have you ever felt like, no matter how hard you try, something keeps working against you? Have you noticed repeated patterns of loss, delay, conflict, or limitation that don't match your effort or intentions? Have words ever been spoken over you? By family, by authority figures, by angry people, or even by yourself, that seemed to echo long after the moment passed? If so, stay with me, because words are not as harmless as people think, and breaking their influence requires more than silence. I am speaking from experience, not imagination. In witchcraft, words are not decoration. Words are tools. They are carriers of intention. They are vehicles of agreement. They shape perception, emotion, and behavior. Long before rituals, objects, or symbols were used, words were used. Words create direction. They assign identity. They set boundaries. And once spoken repeatedly or with emotional force, they can act like invisible laws in a person's life. Most people misunderstand curses. They imagine dramatic spells, candles, or ceremonies. But the most effective curses are simple sentences spoken with authority, emotion, or repetition. You'll never succeed. You're just like your father. And nothing ever works out for you. You'll always be alone. You're cursed. Many of these are spoken casually, in anger, in frustration, or even as jokes, but spiritually and psychologically, they land. In witchcraft, we understood that agreement is the real power. A word only becomes active when it is accepted internally, consciously, or unconsciously. That acceptance may show up as belief, fear, resignation, or repetition. Once accepted, the word doesn't need reinforcement from the outside. It begins to speak from within. That is why some people say, I don't believe in curses, but I still feel stuck. Belief is not the only doorway. Repetition, trauma, authority, and emotional weight all create access. Children are especially vulnerable because words spoken over them shape identity before logic develops. Adults are vulnerable during pain, loss, or fear because defenses are low. Now here is the part most people don't realize. Words can be broken by words, not by volume, not by emotion, but by clarity and authority. In the systems I left, we feared one thing more than rituals being exposed. We feared people learning how to withdraw agreement using precise language. There are 5 words in particular that dismantle curses because they do something very specific. They interrupt internal agreement. They restore authority. They replace confusion with decision. These words are not magic. They are not a formula. They work because they realign the speaker with truth instead of fear. The first reason curses persist is not because they are strong, but because people don't realize they are still responding to them. A person may say, I don't believe that anymore, but still live as if it's true. The body remembers what the mind claims to forget. Breaking a curse requires alignment between speech, belief, and action. Another reason curses linger is because people try to fight them emotionally instead of canceling them deliberately. Emotion gives energy, but clarity removes permission. When permission is removed, the curse collapses on its own. Darkness does not need to be attacked. It needs to be exposed and dismissed. In witchcraft, when we wanted to neutralize a spoken curse, whether from another practitioner or from a family line, we didn't panic. We didn't scream. We didn't plead. We spoke with certainty and finality. Certainty is what ends influence. The 5 words I'm going to explain in this message are powerful because they are final. They are not defensive. They are not reactive. They do not argue with the curse. They override it. But before I go further, you need to understand something foundational. A curse only has power where identity is uncertain. When someone knows who they are, words bounce off. When someone doubts who they are, words sink in. That's why attacks often come during identity transitions, new jobs, marriages, failures, grief, spiritual growth. The ground is soft. Some of you listening right now are realizing that the problem was never effort. You tried hard, you prayed, you worked, but something felt misaligned. That misalignment often comes from old words still operating silently. You may have spoken some of these words over yourself. That doesn't condemn you. It explains you. Self-curses are common, especially in people who grew up criticized, controlled, or neglected. Repeating negative self-talk feels normal when it was modeled early. But normal does not mean harmless. This message is not about fear of words. It is about mastery of them. When the 5 words are spoken correctly, something shifts internally first. Relief, lightness, clarity. Then behavior changes. Choices change. Confidence returns. Opportunities are perceived differently. It doesn't look dramatic at first, but the pattern breaks. I want you to listen slowly, not urgently. Urgency feeds fear. Understanding feeds authority. As we continue, I will explain what each of the 5 words does, why they work, and how to speak them in a way that actually breaks agreement instead of just sounding spiritual. This is not about shouting. This is about deciding. Darkness relies on confusion. Clarity ends contracts. And this is only the beginning. The first word that breaks a curse is the word no. Simple, direct, and often underestimated. In witchcraft, we never feared long prayers the way we feared a clear refusal. A no is not emotional. It is not explanatory. It is a boundary. Most curses survive because the person never actually refused them. They hated them, feared them, resented them, but they never rejected them. Hatred still acknowledges presence. Fear still grants attention, but a no removes consent. When someone says a no internally and externally, something shifts. They stop cooperating. They stop rehearsing the sentence spoken against them. They stop behaving as if it might be true. In spiritual terms, this is withdrawal of agreement. In psychological terms, this is boundary enforcement. Either way, influence weakens immediately. In the systems I left, we understood that a curse spoken without acceptance is like a seed thrown on stone. It may hit, but it cannot root. The problem is that many people never say no. They say, I hope not, a maybe, a what if, or I'm afraid this might be true. Those are still openings. Saying no does not require anger. It requires clarity. A no, I do not accept that. A no, that is not who I am. You know, that does not have authority over my future. When spoken calmly and consistently, the internal atmosphere changes. The mind stops circling the old sentence. Space opens for something new. The second word is cancel. This word works because it addresses the mechanism, not the emotion. Curses operate like contracts, not legal contracts on paper, but internal agreements that guide behavior and expectation. Canceling something means declaring it void, not fighting it. When you fight something, you acknowledge its legitimacy. When you cancel it, you deny its right to exist. In witchcraft, when an agreement was cancelled properly, the system did not retaliate. It disengaged. There was nothing left to work with. Cancelling is not shouting, I break this once and moving on. It is a decision that is reinforced by behavior. When you cancel a curse, you stop living as if it's active. Many people say cancellation words, but continue to act under the old assumption. That creates conflict inside. Real cancellation aligns speech with choice. If someone was told they would always fail, cancelling that word also means allowing yourself to try without expecting collapse. Expectation is where curses hide. The third word is release. This word is powerful because it does something many people avoid. It lets go of the source. Some curses persist not because the words are powerful, but because the emotional tie to the speaker remains strong. Anger, bitterness, longing for approval, unresolved pain, all of these keep the connection alive. Releasing does not mean agreeing with what was said. It means refusing to carry the speaker's weight any longer. When you release someone, you remove their voice from your inner world. Their sentence no longer echoes. This is especially important with parental words, authority figures, or early relationships. Those voices often shape identity deeply. In the systems I left, unresolved emotional bonds were considered open channels. Cutting the bond was more effective than countering the curse itself. Once the bond was gone, the words lost context. They became noise instead of commands. The fourth word is replace. This is where many people stop too early. They say no, they cancel, they release, but they leave a vacuum. Vacuums get filled. If you remove an old word and don't install a new one, the mind often reverts under stress. Replacing does not mean repeating affirmations mindlessly. It means choosing a statement that aligns with reality and reinforces a new pattern. If the curse said you will always be alone, replacement might be I am capable of healthy connection. If the curse said you will fail, replacement might be I learn and improve. Replacement must be believable, not dramatic. Believability is what makes it stick. In witchcraft, replacement was always required. Empty space was dangerous. Filled space was stable. The fifth word is authority. This is not spoken as a declaration alone. It is embodied. Authority comes from ownership of self. When someone knows they have the right to define their life, external words lose power. Authority is not dominance, it is authorship. When you speak from authority, you are not asking permission for peace, you are choosing it. This is why some people can say the right words and still feel unchanged. They are borrowing language without owning identity. Authority grows as you practice alignment. Each time you act contrary to an old curse, authority strengthens. Each time you pause instead of obeying fear, authority builds. Over time, the internal voice becomes stronger than any external one. These 5 words work together. No withdraws consent. Cancel ends the agreement. Release removes the emotional tie. Replace fills the space. Authority sustains the change. None of this requires ritual. None of it requires fear. It requires honesty and repetition through action. If you are listening and feeling something shift already, that is normal. Clarity often feels like relief mixed with discomfort. Relief because something makes sense. Discomfort because it reveals how much influence was never questioned. Do not rush this process. Rushing is often driven by fear. Fear wants instant relief. Authority grows through steady alignment. One of the most overlooked reasons curses seem to have come back is not because they were never broken, but because the habits built under them were never questioned. A word spoken against you doesn't just sit in the air. It trains responses. It shapes how you interpret setbacks. It whispers explanations when things go wrong. Even after the word is cancelled, the reflex it created may still fire automatically. This is why some people say, I broke that years ago, but I still struggle. What they really mean is, I stopped believing the sentence, but I kept reacting as if it were true. Breaking a curse ends its authority, but retraining the mind restores freedom. Freedom is not instant comfort. It is regained control. In the systems I left, we relied heavily on reflex. We knew that once a person internalized a message, they would continue enforcing it themselves. No outside effort was needed. They would hesitate when opportunity appeared. They would expect rejection before connection. We would interpret neutral events negatively. The curse didn't need to speak anymore. The person spoke it internally. This is why awareness is more powerful than confrontation. The moment you catch yourself reacting from an old assumption, you interrupt the cycle. You don't need to shame yourself. Shame strengthens the old word. You simply notice and choose differently. Self-cursing is far more common than people realize. It often sounds reasonable, even humble. I'm just not good at this. People like me don't get those chances. It's probably going to go wrong. These statements feel protective, but they quietly reinforce limitation. They prepare you for disappointment instead of possibility. Over time, they become identity statements. Breaking self-curses requires gentleness and firmness at the same time. Gentleness because many of these patterns form during pain. Firmness because you are no longer willing to live under them. When a limiting thought appears, you don't need to argue with it emotionally. You apply the same structure. No, cancel, release, replace, authority. You don't have to say all 5 words every time. Often, a single clear internal no is enough. Over time, the mind learns a new pattern. Old sentences lose their urgency. New responses become natural. Another important point is this. Curses lose power when your life stops matching their prediction. This is why small wins matter so much. Every time you act outside the old pattern, you weaken the old word. Every time you take a risk that fear told you not to take, you prove the sentence wrong. Action is reinforcement. In witchcraft, we feared people who acted despite fear more than people who prayed loudly. Action without panic is a form of authority. It tells the system there is nothing left to work with. You may notice resistance when you begin to live differently. Old thoughts may intensify briefly. This does not mean the curse is returning. It means the habit is losing ground. Habits fight extinction. Stay steady. Don't dramatize the resistance. Starve it of attention. I want to speak directly to those who feel like many words were spoken against them, not just one. Family patterns. Generational labels. Cultural limitations. You are not required to break everything at once. Start with what shows up most often. The mind cannot carry 10 battles at the same time. Choose clarity over intensity. As you move forward, your language matters. Not because words are magical, but because they guide attention. Speak in ways that leave room for growth. You don't have to declare perfection. You just need to stop declaring defeat. If you catch yourself thinking, "This always happens to me," pause. That sentence is a doorway. Close it. Replace it with something neutral if positivity feels fake. This happened, but it does not define everything. Neutral truth is stronger than forced optimism. Authority is built quietly. You don't feel powerful at first, you feel stable. Stability is the sign you're on the right path. Dramatic feelings come and go. Stability stays. As this message continues, I want you to understand that nothing here requires you to fear curses, people, or the past. Fear keeps you reactive. Understanding makes you respond. The past only has power when it is still being rehearsed. Once it is understood, it becomes information instead of control. You are not obligated to live under words spoken in ignorance, anger, or pain. You are allowed to outgrow sentences that no longer fit your life. This is shadow warfare, and the real battle is not against words spoken long ago, but against the habit of letting them define you now. One of the biggest misunderstandings people have is thinking that a curse-free life means never having negative thoughts, never facing resistance, and never feeling doubt again. That expectation itself becomes another trap. Freedom does not mean the absence of challenge. Freedom means challenge no longer defines identity or direction. When a curse is truly broken, something subtle but profound happens. You stop organizing your life around avoidance. You stop making decisions primarily to prevent failure, rejection, or pain. Instead, you begin making decisions based on alignment. What fits who I am now? What moves me forward? What reflects clarity instead of fear? People who are still under the influence of old words often ask, "What if this goes wrong?" People who are free ask, "What can I learn if it does?" That shift alone changes outcomes more than any spoken declaration ever could. Another sign that freedom has taken root is emotional neutrality toward old triggers. The words that once stung now feel distant, not because you've hardened, but because they've lost relevance. When a sentence no longer describes you, it no longer wounds you. You don't need to defend against what doesn't apply. This is why obsessing over curses can actually slow healing. Constantly scanning your life for attacks keeps attention focused backward. Attention feeds pattern. The goal is not vigilance born of fear, but awareness rooted in confidence. You don't need to hunt shadows when you know where you're standing. Living curse-free means living present. Old words pull you into the past. Anxiety pulls you into the future. Authority lives in the now. When you are present, old scripts don't run automatically. You choose your response in real time. It also means accepting that growth can feel unfamiliar. Some people break curses and then feel disoriented because struggle had become normal. Peace can feel empty at first. That doesn't mean something is wrong. It means your nervous system is recalibrating. Stay there. Let stability become familiar. Another marker of freedom is self-compassion. When people are still under old words, they are harsh with themselves. Mistakes feel like confirmation. Failure feels personal. But when the curse is gone, mistakes become feedback instead of identity. You correct without collapsing. I want to address something important before closing. Some of you may be thinking, what if someone speaks against me again? Here is the truth. Words only land where there is space for them. When identity is solid, words bounce. They may be heard, but they are not absorbed. You don't need to prepare for every possible attack. You just need to remain aligned with who you are. Alignment is the real protection. If someone speaks limitation over you, you don't need to argue. You don't need to prove them wrong immediately. You simply don't internalize it. Internalization is where power transfers. Refusal keeps ownership. The 5 words you've learned are not a ritual to repeat endlessly. They are tools to use when needed. Over time, you'll notice you need them less often. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The goal was never to make you hyper-spiritual, hyper-alert, or hyper-reactive. The goal was to restore authorship, to put you back in the position of defining your life with clarity, instead of inheriting definitions from pain, anger, or ignorance. You are not here to fulfill someone else's sentence about you. You are here to write your own. Shadow warfare exists to expose what operates quietly so people stop living under invisible pressure. Not to create fear, but to restore choice. Not to glorify darkness, but to dissolve its influence through understanding. If this message resonated, it's because something in you was already ready to let go. Let that readiness guide you gently forward. No rush, no drama, just alignment. Words only rule when they are believed. Clarity ends belief. Authority sustains freedom. And now you know how to stand.